So far away.
I know.
And, wow, these are squishy.
Yeah, I made sure they were comfortable chairs.
Very comfortable. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts. I want to tell you that we are in for a special treat this evening. And let me tell you a little bit about our guest. And this is what I'm going to say beforehand. Cancel that. Beforehand, I'm going to add something else on there too. Okay. Jessica Silverman is an ambitious, innovative, and internationally renowned contemporary art gallery, building artists' careers and supporting art buyers keen on establishing and maintaining significant collections. So if you're not here for the Jessica Silverman conversation, you are in the wrong place, but we invite you to still stay seated because we're gonna have a good conversation. I am Rehema Barber. I'm the Director of Curatorial Affairs here, and I will be your host or maybe your wayfinder this evening. Silverman founded her eponymous gallery in 2008. She has an MA in Curatorial Practice from San Francisco's California College of the Arts and a BFA from Otis College in Los Angeles. Silverman sat on the San Francisco Arts Commission for 9 years and is happy to consult on public art projects. The gallery represents artists at all stages of their careers who make museum-worthy art, works, or museum-worthy art. Okay, we're going to explore that.
Sure.
Works by the gallery artists have been acquired by museums such as Tate, the Tate London, the Centre Pompidou, the Museum Ludwig in Cologne, Reina Sofia in Madrid, MoMA in New York, the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Horshorn, Perez Art Museum Miami, MCA Chicago, Art Institute of Chicago, Dallas Museum of Art, the Nasher Sculpture Center Dallas, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the National Gallery of Canada. I'm going to just keep going. And then SF MoMA, and then the Kalamazoo Institute of Arts is on that list too.
Yeah.
Just so that.
They are.
We are. Jessica Silverman shows regularly at Art Basel Miami Beach and intermittently at the Swiss Parisian and Hong Kong editions of the Art Fair. The gallery also participates in the Frieze Fairs, especially Los Angeles and Seoul, the Armory in New York, and Fog Design and Art in San Francisco. And then the gallery is a member of the Art Dealers Association of America. So please help me, without further ado, welcome Jessica Silverman.
Thank you.
Ooh, this is taking a while for us to get it together, right?
We were reminiscing, it's been about 5 years.
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you for coming and thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
And for making my job easy by preparing questions.
You did.
I'm really tired, I have a baby, and
Yes.
I just need little prods for questions.
Well, we'll take it
But it's
easy.
great to be here in Kalamazoo, so thank you for coming.
Yes. Well, Jessica, we're going to start out early, in the early years, and then obviously if you have questions, we'll open it up afterwards for sure. I'll leave time for questions. But you're originally from a suburb of Detroit and grew up living around artwork by the likes of Yoko Ono, Bengalis, and some of the most important conceptual artists of our time. So was there any particular work that really spoke to you during that period of your life and maybe inspired you?
Yeah, so my grandparents, just for context, were art collectors. They collected fluxus primarily. Fluxus is sort of situated between Dada and Surrealism. It took place Germany and Japan primarily, but it made its way to America, especially with the likes of Yoko Ono. My grandfather in particular was very quirky, really kind of eccentric, liked to be on the steep end of the learning curve, and collected not only art, but also things like Japanese binding shoes and photography, and he was really a collector. That bug kind of skipped a generation, and so in my house we had loans from my grandparents, but my parents didn't actually collect art, but still now I could draw you a map of their collection in Michigan when I would go visit their home and like things on the wall. And one of the pieces that I really greatly remember is a Japanese artist called Ao. It's AY-O, Japanese artist, and he would do these boxes. And they were like little wooden boxes with holes on top, and you would just stick your finger inside of them. So it was like, I liked that it was experiential and that there was like something physical and tactile. And there would be different things inside. So marbles, I remember, a sponge, like kind of foam in another one, and then actually my grandfather had to tape over one of them so there was a needle. So he didn't want us to poke that one. But I really remember that piece because I think it made me feel something, like not only physically, but also just the experience of different textures and the kind of activation component of it is just deeply memorable.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So keeping with this Michigan-based question, are you a Michigander or Californian?
Michigander at heart.
Okay.
Sure.
Just teasing.
But I've lived in California now longer than I lived in Michigan, but still come here 2 to 3 times a year and, represent artists that live in the Detroit area. And actually one is now in Chelsea, Michigan. I'm not exactly sure where that is, to be honest. I know it's not too far from here, but yeah, no, Michigander.
Yeah, I know. I'm only asking that because I'm curious about you can't just say it was the weather that drove you to California. So
No.
I'm curious about why California for your studies.
Well, I mean, honestly, being like a queer person in Michigan, in Bloomfield Hills, Birmingham, when I was younger was kind of challenging for me, just in the kind of high school, middle school system I was in. And so I was really excited to get to California. And I think my parents really just wanted me to thrive and be like amongst creative types. And so they really endorsed my going to Otis College. However, as soon as I got there, I realized I didn't want to be an artist, which threw kind of like a little wrench in the system since I was there to do a BA. But I had great teachers who allowed me to turn my studio into a kind of gallery space, and I would show like my colleagues, my young student friends in my studio space. And so I had like a little gallery called Studio 228. I still remember it. I had my dad's designer help me make a logo and everything, and I took it really seriously. And I started practicing writing press release and doing all the things one would do.
Yeah.
So I stayed there, went to San Francisco for grad school with the intention of actually going back to LA when I graduated, and then I kind of opened this project space and decided to stay in San Francisco because there was a nice kind of quietness about the Bay Area at that time. It's probably still quieter than LA, and I wanted to be able to experiment and get my feet on the ground and figure out what I was doing without being under a spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I just stayed, and it's been greatly beneficial, I think, to the health of the gallery, actually, to do what we do in the Bay Area.
I think so, and not to mention, I think you also make that art scene. I think a lot of people think you really make San Francisco a better art scene because of your program.
Thank you. I mean, there's not that many contemporary galleries there, so I do think we are probably the most ambitious and the most kind of known in Asia and Europe, and do the most art fairs. We do too many art fairs.
Well, everyone says that too.
Yeah.
They do too many art fairs. I think there are too many to attend.
Too many, exactly.
Okay, so just keeping with that kind of thread, you started to curate, then you do gallery space. Who are those first artists that you were like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do a real proper gallery with?
Yeah, lots of people come to mind, but Tammy Ray Carland, who's an artist, she's actually the provost at CCA now and teaches. She's amazing. She, photographer, kind of conceptual artist, was very close with Kathleen Hanna and did a lot of music stuff, has a massive following. I remember when we did her first show in 2008, it was just a crazy scene at the gallery, and we have 400 square foot space at that time, so it was flooding out into the streets. So we continue to represent her. I really believe in her work. She's kind of on the teaching track at the moment. But, everyone will circle back to the studio. Yeah, she comes to mind. And then Dashiell Manley, who's an LA-based artist. He was he went to Cal Arts in UCLA, straight out of school, and we did his first show, and we're still working together and about to do, I don't know, it might be his 5th or 6th show coming up this summer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So
you don't stick with all the artists, I'll just say, you bring artists on, I think, with the intention that it's like a long relationship and you mean it when you get committed. And then sometimes people go in different directions. Sometimes it's you, sometimes I feel not connected with the work and I have to honor that and be honest about it. Being from Michigan, I find myself people are always you're so honest. That's maybe a Michigan thing.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just have to own that and make the hard call. And other times it's the artist who's this isn't working, I want something else, or I'm taking a step back, whatever the case. So, but those are 2 artists that are from the beginning and still with us, which is nice.
And I can strongly also attest that Tammy Ray Carlin is an amazing photographer. I actually had her in a show that I was doing before I joined the KIA. So it was a really good show too.
Yeah, it was.
I think I have that catalog upstairs. It's called, oh my goodness, In the Eye of the Beholder. And it was about women in art and their art making process. So it's really good. Okay, not that I'm tooting my own horn. Moving on.
She should. She's a great curator.
You just moved into, not just moved.
2 years.
2 years. A 5,000 square foot space. How's that journey been? 400 square feet.
Well, there was
5,000.
3,000 in
Yeah.
But we're honestly bursting at the seams. I'm again looking at new buildings. I was just saying that I love my building, but the real estate market in the Bay Area is quite depressed at the moment, so it might be a good time to think ahead. But our space is amazing. It's in Chinatown. We built it during the pandemic, and so after the pandemic, people were so excited to come to the gallery, and we opened, I think, April of 2021. So it was just as people, if you can remember, were starting to kind of come out of the haze. We then all went back in after there was another outbreak, but it was a great moment. And it's a beautiful space, and Chinatown's a really wonderful neighborhood. It's close to North Beach, it's close to Union Square. We're a 10-minute walk from SF MoMA, from Moab, from Yerba Buena, from the Jewish Museum. There's great food.
It's a great location. I can attest to that. I also like the fact that you worked within the sort of the community aesthetic. You didn't completely change the facade.
No, it was really important that I don't own the building, but I wanted to identify our space. So we tried to match the size of the brick of the historic building with our brick, but we used a black brick. And so it's very kind of sleek and sophisticated, but still kind of goes with the building. And the building next door is painted black, so it all looks very kind of unified. We tried.
So we've moved into the present, and I've got all the searing questions here. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So you collect now.
Yes.
What are you collecting now?
I think that every dealer is sort of a closet collector. We get access to great things because we show them, and it's also maybe not such a secret that when you buy things, you are you're just endorsing them further by having them in your home, but it is also an investment in your future. A lot of dealers I know, Matthew Marks, has been collecting from his own shows for 20 years, and putting things into his shows that he collected 20 years ago. It's a super smart business move as well. Let's see, what are we collecting now? Okay, so there's an amazing Japanese artist called Masako Miki, who's in San Francisco. It's not public yet, but she's gonna do a show with us. We often, my wife and I will buy things in advance of showing them. It's kind of a nice way to get to know if we really like something, and I have to say I'm loving living with this sculpture. It's felted wool, and it's super labor intensive process. It's a beautiful kind of formal kind of object. And it's tall, like 5 feet tall.
Are they with Ryan Lee? Is she
Yes,
with, yes.
she did Miami Basel, this huge installation.
Yes, I was just talking to Jeffrey
Yeah.
the other day
Yeah,
about
she's
doing
amazing.
it. Okay, so now I can switch and
Yeah.
talk to you about doing that.
We can collaborate.
Like
She's-
she's 6 degrees of
She's
separation.
awesome. She's
Yes, she
like
is.
really, really good. I mean, we also buy like a lot of the artists we show. So we bought a Louis Hollowell painting from
Yeah.
our last show. Louis actually wanted to keep 2 of the 10 paintings, but I convinced her to only keep 1 so we could buy 1, which was exciting. Matthew Angelo Harrison, who is based in Detroit, he just opened a show actually in Switzerland, in Zurich with Eber Pressenhuber.
Yeah.
He's amazing. He actually worked at Ford in the automotive industry, in the clay department for years prior to moving into being a full-time artist.
He's on my list.
Yeah, he's amazing.
So-
He wants to move to LA, so you should go. We'll get to it before he does. Who
Yeah,
knows?
I
Yeah.
don't know if we can't move
Artist
there.
is top. So trying to think what else we've recently acquired. I'm like going around the house. Claire Rojas, she's
Oh, yeah.
a show that we have up now. We tend to buy a lot of her work.
Yeah.
It's kind of addicting from works on paper to painting. So we just bought our 6th.
Oh,
So
wow.
a small work on paper, but really beautiful of a bird.
So a lot of these artists you represent.
Yeah.
And so basically you're representing and living with the art. That's
Mhm.
that's full immersion.
It is full immersion. Yeah, I know. There's other people, and I'm not even thinking of who they are. I mean, Judy Chicago, we own a lot of her work, partially because I also get offered things secondary market from her, from people. And I buy a lot back.
Yeah.
And I actually buy the work back oftentimes with Judy. I think this is kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because Judy didn't make any money like the first round, when she like gifted it to someone.
Yes.
So I'll often just say like, if you want to join me in buying this back, then you can also be part of the upside when we sell it.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of that, and
Okay, can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Because like you talked about the secondary market, and I think people would find this interesting. Like, an artist's blood, sweat, and
Yeah.
tears. So you're actively making sure your artists their works aren't undervalued. Because sometimes, I can see from the perspective of museums, we kind of love the secondary market because sometimes you can really get in under the radar, but it's not always good for the artist.
yeah, no, I mean, in California, there's actually legally binding rights that the artist gets a certain percentage back, but the artist also has to know that rule and then go seek that money. It's not like you just get a check in the mail, like you actually have to go fight for it a little bit.
Yeah.
Things sell at auction, and you can't always make sure that they sell for a great price. We try to keep an eye out when that happens. We often encourage collectors who come back to us and say, like, they're getting divorced, or they're moving, or they're downsizing, whatever the case. We try to encourage them to donate works to institutions, take a tax write-off. We will help them do that. We try to dissuade people of putting things at auction. We'll take things back on consignment if we feel like we have an opportunity to resell it. For a lot of younger primary artists like Dashiell Manley, who I mentioned earlier, we have a super strong primary market for him, but the secondary isn't great because he's 40 years old and still making great work that people are buying. And so people would rather have a new work than like a work from 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Judy is like a specific case because when she was working on the dinner party, she gifted a lot of things. That was like how she paid people. People die or like, it's passed down through the family, it's given to like a child and they don't want it anymore. So they often end up in my lap.
And that's a truly formative period.
Yes. Yeah,
It's like a
totally.
very highly sought after period for sure.
One
But-
artist I will mention that we own, which is kind of one of our most important pieces, is a Fred Eversley, who's not an artist we represent. So it's not just artists we
Yeah.
represent.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we ourselves acquired a Fred
Amazing.
Eversley last year, but it's a print
That's
that
great.
he did.
He's
It's
amazing.
still really good.
Yeah, really important artist.
But still on my list, so
Yeah.
maybe we need to talk.
Yeah.
Christine, I'm up here making deals on
Yeah.
stage. You get to see this behind the scenes action. Okay, so now more artist questions, because this one is the one I've been wanting. So you really are known for the diverse array of artists that you represent. And I'm just really curious because you started out representing diverse artists.
Yeah.
This wasn't like something you just hopped on board and started doing. So
Right.
can you talk about the idea of having a gallery from the very beginning, saying, I want to represent these diverse voices, and how that's kind of how you were situated then
Yeah.
versus now?
I mean, growing up in Michigan, you know, my surroundings were always really diverse, and so I guess I didn't think too much about it. In a way, I just was like making sure that the program didn't read one-sided. That was always really important to me. I mean, you know, a program is like what I like, but I think it needs to be a little bit more than that. You need to be also kind of taking the pulse of what the world is looking at and what the world needs in a way. You know, I try to represent artists who are dealing with politics, but not like in overt ways, through personal stories. And so that's sort of the path I follow, and I've found it has led me to a really diverse group of artists. You know, Sadie Barnett is an Oakland-based artist. She's amazing. Her father was a Black Panther. He like lived in Compton and is best friends with Angela Davis still. And Sadie went to CalArts, worked for Charles Gaines and Andrea Bowers. Andrea Bowers, also an artist we represent. And then Sadie's father founded the first Black-owned gay bar in the Bay Area. And so like, that story just is amazing. And I said to Sadie, I remember the first time in her studio, like, if all you do for the rest of your career is make work about your family, like, it's gonna be great, because there's so much there. And she has been delving more and more deeply into the family history.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then when I found Rose Simpson's work in New Mexico, it wasn't like intentional. Rose Simpson is a Native American artist based in the Santa Clara Pueblo. She is getting a ton of attention right now. She's in the Whitney Biennial, and she has a huge installation at Madison Square Park at the moment.
And was named an artist of the year in the New York Times this year.
Yes, and she has a show at the Norton in West Palm Beach with her mother at the moment.
Oh.
And she's finishing a huge indoor sculpture commission for the Cleveland Museum,
Oh, wow.
which opens this summer.
Nice.
So she's like nonstop. But I wasn't like, oh, let me find an Indigenous artist. I was in New Mexico for New Year's, actually with Judy Chicago, and went to all the museums, and Rose had a solo show there, and so came upon her work. And that has opened the floodgates to, you know, other Indigenous artists. So we did a show with Jeffrey Gibson, who is now representing America in Venice, the Pavilion, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And we're doing a show with Andrea Carlson next year, who is based in Minneapolis, incredible artist. Also representing Julie Buffalo Head, who's also in Minneapolis, painter.
Those are all people
Yeah.
on my list,
Yeah.
Jessica.
Keep
I
them
am
on there.
so fortunate to have Jessica here tonight, because now I get to bug her incessantly about some of the artists that
I'm
are
taking notes.
Yes.
Mental notes.
So when you're talking about the, you know, artists, I'm going to paraphrase a quote from an interview I found that you did last year. It said, and it was about asking what you're looking for in an artist. It says, I would say consistency, and that they have an ongoing studio practice that they take seriously. I'm looking for artists who move between conceptual rigor and visual sensibilities. I want them to have interesting ideas, but be dedicated to materiality. I changed that just a little bit. And so what are some of the other qualities you're looking for with the artists you're wanting to work with?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, just going back to that, I mean, I talk about like the studio practice, because I take what I do super seriously and I work really hard. And so I like to see a similar kind of seriousness and focus and sort of like in the studio from the artists I represent. And I think it's really important that, you know, it takes two, it's a relationship, like they have to do their part. I can't just like go and get an artist who hasn't made work a show. It just doesn't happen like that. Unless they died and then we're dealing with the archive. What else am I looking for? I mean, like I mentioned, I do like personal histories. Portraiture has always like fascinated me in different ways, and I think that ties into the personal histories. I don't show a ton of figurative work, although we've started to more recently. And I think I've been drawn to it more because of those kind of personal stories that can be imbued into paintings that have like narrative structure. I like when artists are fastidious about their craft. You know, like we represent an artist, Ruby C. Tutt, who's a younger Indian artist based in Oakland. And she's totally self-taught, and she's just doing a printmaking residency right now. And she said yes to it because she just wants to like expand the way in which she knows to make work, and you know, thinks that there's no way she's going to end this residency with not learning something, right? So Woody Diathello did the Kohler residency. You know, like I think it's really interesting when artists are excited to get out of their studio and out of their comfort zone to try something else. Even Judy Chicago is still experimenting all the time. You know, and experimentation I think is really important in an artist practice. Also for the artist to kind of not be like just pumping out the same thing over and over. The market can be like a very dangerous and beautiful kind of like, you know, it's like an ocean. It's like really beautiful. You want to go in on a hot day, but also there's dangers lurking. You know, because if someone likes to buy something and the artist wants to make something else, it can be a little hard. And some dealers can be persuasive in them getting the artist to just make the same thing over and over and over again. Which, you know.
And we have really major examples. We're not going to name names, but like, there are some major people that today, like their style just is not changing because it's what.
Totally. And some of these artists I really like, and it's not that I think they make bad work even. And I see subtle changes. But you sort of wonder if they didn't have the market like chomping at the bit, would they still be making the same thing? You know, we'll never know.
So I'm really curious about, you know, when you first began working with an artist, are there any sort of like not like rules, but, you know, are there any sort of rules or guidelines you kind of try and establish or advice that you give?
Transparency. That's like really, we're big on transparency. My whole team, I've hired like, you know, 12 people who are super type A, and they're amazing, and my team is phenomenal, and they're really organized, and the best way we can support an artist, especially with like art fairs and shows, you know, and opportunities, is to have complete transparency so we know what's happening, especially when an artist starts having like 3 or 4 galleries. You know, we want to know when you're doing a show with another gallery, so we're not like asking you for inventory, we can be supportive. So the more we know, the better we can kind of like engage with and support the studio. We use Asana, which is like this project management software that we're really proud of using, and it just helps keep us organized. And we like our artists also to be organized. I've introduced a few of my artists to ArtLogic, which is our database. company. They're out of London, and they do a very simplified version for artists. I think artists should really care, like, okay, we keep fastidious records, but the artist should also keep fastidious records, you know. We send the artist, you know, payment paperwork, this is who owns it, this is the city. Okay, they don't have my client's contact information, but they have a lot of basic information that they should also kind of care for and file. We like to get to know how the artist studio runs. Do they have people who work for them? Are they there every day? You know, we try to just get like as much information as possible so we can be as supportive as possible with the artist. And also, we tell them, do not sell out of their studio. That is a big one.
and it can be hard too,
Yeah.
because there's sometimes you get to a point where, you know, you're kind of in it with the
Yeah.
gallery, but then you're not.
Well, there's artists who do that, like Michelene Thomas is like famously not represented by a dealer really, but she just does her thing. She shows
She does.
with people,
Yeah.
but also is kind of a free agent. There's actually a newer company, newer to me, called, I think it's 219 Agency. It's a new agency, so this is also a new, totally new to me thing. I have a meeting with them to learn more next week, in fact. And they represent artists. So they take a percentage of the studio's entire income to support the artist, and I will learn exactly what they do, but I think they help them make decisions.
Okay.
Like it's sort of like a neutral,
Okay.
as neutral can be.
I'm curious about that after you get all the
I
411.
think they also like represent Hank and
Okay.
Rashid,
Yeah.
Cecily Brown.
Wow.
I mean, this is
That's
public
interesting.
information, so I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
no, but that's interesting
it is.
knowing that like someone like Hank, he has
Yeah.
he has a gallery, you
Good-
know, as
a
does
great-
Rashid.
Yeah,
they all,
great galleries.
yeah,
But they want, I think there is this new, if you look at like LA and the agent model, I think there is this new model that's sort of infiltrating. My friend Peter Cologne just left the gallery world, and he's also just started he's actually consulting for galleries.
Mm.
So, you know, oh yeah, what's his name? He left the Whitney, Chris.
Oh, Tim, no, not Thomas.
He's also consulting for galleries, so like, there's like the model, but like, I play by the rules of the gallery, but then
Yeah.
there's also like lots of people, you know, creating new roles, and it's sort of what makes the art world interesting, you know, it's why I think a lot of us have
Yeah.
joined it, because you get to do and be what you want.
That's true. I have a question about like how you find artists. I know you mentioned earlier, like you found Rose B. Simpson by a happy coincidence, but are there?
I mean, my wife and I literally were like, the altitude's really bad in Santa Fe, we're like, are we just having like an altitude vision? No, this is good work, right? Like we were both like checking each other.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. So, have you ever received it? Because every now and then you get an unsolicited proposal, I'm sure.
All the time.
Yes.
I don't usually look at them. but
Okay.
Don't send me one, please.
I promise I won't send you one. I get them too.
Yeah, they go to the info account, which I don't see. Someone writes a nice email back.
Oh, that's nice.
And I have.
They actually respond?
I'm
Someone
told
from
they
your
do,
gallery?
but I'm not fact checking, but yes.
Nice.
We can test it out.
Okay, I'll send you an unsolicited proposal.
I actually know there was a gallery in London, Laura Bartlett years ago, and Cyprien Gaillard.
Yeah.
He's like a quite famous European artist, unsolicited.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's chosen with Spruce Makers, and he's like major now.
Wow.
So it happens. You never know.
Every now and then there's
Yeah.
some light.
I will look if sometimes my team will forward me things.
Okay.
I mean, just this morning, a collector forwarded me an artist to look at, like on Instagram. I look. We use Slack, and so like we have a channel where we like put artists to like look at, and in our directors meetings, if we ever have like 20 minutes extra, we'll just pull up that channel and sort of like quickly zip through
Nice.
and look at things. But I find art all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, at SFMOMA the other day, I like took a picture of a name of a woman who I never heard of before, did a deep dive, like talking to her son-in-law soon.
Yeah.
She's no longer living, there's like a whole archive, that seems really interesting. Ruby, who I mentioned, so the DeYoung does a show called the DeYoung Open. Every few years, there's like hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe hundreds, thousands sounds like a lot, of pieces that are, it's like a jury exhibition.
Okay.
But it's an actual, it's like a show that's up for like 3 months. And you have to go drop off your piece and the curators install it thematically.
Oh.
And it's like crazy salon style. You have to Google, you guys should Google images, it's actually very cool. Claudia Schmuckley, who's the curator at the DeYoung Museum and a dear friend, walked me through the last one, it was during the pandemic, and pointed out Ruby's work.
Oh, wow.
That's how I found Ruby. I mean, she had just had twins.
Oh, wow.
And she was just like trying to she studied biology and environmental studies at Berkeley and is totally self-taught miniature painter. And she's now actually gonna have a show at SF Mama.
That's nice.
So, it's, you see artists everywhere.
So the key thing we're getting at here is that like, if you're an artist, you never know.
Yeah. You never know who's looking.
Yeah.
It's really true. I mean, a lot of my colleagues sleuth on Instagram. I'm not I try not to because I just think it's healthier for my brain. But I know lots of dealers who ping artists on Instagram all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
I like to see things in person. I'm kind of old school.
I like that too. I agree with you. Like sometimes the screen flattens it out and then you're like, oh, I like this. And then you see it and you're like, oh.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
yeah. But it is also important as an artist to make sure your work translates well digitally.
That's true.
And also when someone's seeing it in person, give something else beyond that.
Yeah.
I'm also equally disappointed sometimes when I like something digitally and I still like it in person, but not for a different reason. I kind of want the surface to tell me something different than the experience I have of it digitally.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, you do want it to change when you see it in person. Like you do want it to have that sort of, oh, I knew this was a good one, So I get that. I know I've been talking a lot and asking a lot of questions. And I think maybe I could open it up for some questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or just tell you more about something else that you want to hear about. Yeah, do you want the microphone or?
Well, I can talk pretty loud.
Yes, that's great.
I'm curious to know more about how you juried the show here.
Oh, yeah.
What that process is like.
Yeah, thank you for asking. It was really fun and I only flew in a few hours ago, so I went straight in the room and it was so nice to see everyone's work in person. And a lot of the pieces I liked even more. So it was really fun. I mean, I kind of had to just sit down in batches because there were a lot of works.
400.
Yeah, and I would do it after I put my daughter to bed and just kind of do an hour or 45 minutes and kind of whittle things down. And I try to stay true to the ethos of some of the narratives that I am really interested in. We show a lot of women artists, and so I was looking at that. I wanted to be also egalitarian and fair. I wanted to make sure I included photography and painting and sculpture. I love ceramics. So I was drawn to a lot of ceramics works. I thought it was really fun, and I definitely noted some people's names and sent them into my Slack channel.
Oh,
Yeah, so
that's nice to know.
you never know. It was a really enjoyable process, though.
I will say that I just quickly did that math, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you were only able to select 15%.
I know it's a
That
lot.
is not a lot at
No.
all.
You should expand the show next year.
Yes, definitely.
No, because I could have chosen more. Like at the
Oh, yeah,
end,
normally you
at
would
the
choose.
end, I had to be like, I was actually making decisions, you know, it wasn't just like, next, you know, like, I was really looking closely.
Oh, no, absolutely. And you can tell by the show. I mean, it changes year to year, but definitely I would say, you know, the jurors, you can kind of see, you know, kind of what they really like. Like last year, I think was a bit more conceptual. And then the year before was like, had lots of interesting materials. So yeah, this year
I'll
is.
come back for next
it's a
year, I wanna
lot
see
of-
what the next
Yeah.
juror does.
No, this was great. It was really amazing to have you do it. Are there any more questions? Because I didn't ask my full gamut. I just wanted to make sure I got everyone else's. Okay.
I'm actually from Detroit. I was wondering if you know anything, any events coming up in the summertime.
In Detroit?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know when it opens, but I've been reading a lot about this place called The Shepherd.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Allison Glenn.
Allison Glenn, really amazing curator, like dear
Yeah,
friend.
she's like the director.
She's the director, so this is, the folks who own the Library Street Collective bought this beautiful church, as one does in Detroit. It's a big church and they've been like renovating it and it's gonna be an exhibition space. And I think, there's also like an artist residency component. So I don't know exactly when they open, but you should definitely keep an eye out for The Shepherd and Allison Glenn. You can probably find her on Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
She's amazing.
Yeah,
I don't know if she's actually moving here, but she's fantastic.
she's from Detroit.
Yeah, I don't know,
So
but is she moving back here?
she has to move back here. I can't imagine.
A lot
her.
of people do remote work these days.
I guess so. I don't
It's a
know.
thing, post-pandemic thing.
I haven't sent her. I have to send her.
I also know there's a show, with Tiff Massey opening at, the DIA coming up.
Yeah.
So those are, I'm impressed I know anything, so thank you for coming out here, appreciate it.
Yes.
I know during the pandemic, there were a lot of Zoom studio visits
Yeah.
happening and stuff. How does that, if it is part of your practice, how do you integrate those?
I mean, it totally is, and because like, you can't really go back from that because it just opens the floodgates. I mean, you can meet with so many more artists now.
Oh, yeah.
Because of Zoom. I was just in Hong Kong and I went to, there's an amazing exhibition space called Tycoon. And I saw this artist, Manjo Kuar, and she's an Indian artist based in Vancouver. And I loved her work and I did a studio visit with her. Like when else, I would have had to wait until I went to Vancouver, which I don't know when that would have been.
Yeah.
So I still like to see things in person, but in that instance, I had just seen her work in person at this show, and so I felt really comfortable talking with her about her practice. I read on like, I don't know, Art News or Artsy, honestly, about an artist called Jess Allen. Recently, she's in Cornwall. She's in her maybe late 60s. She has a show that just closed at a gallery in London called Unit. And there are these like very beautiful, I mean, kind of Hockney-esque paintings.
Oh, wow.
And like, I've never heard of her. I'm always like impressed when I like something and it's an artist I've totally never heard of and they're getting all this press. And she's just like kind of been blowing up. So I haven't seen her work, but I did do a Zoom visit with her and I'm going to London soon, so I'll get to meet her. So I try to like follow it up with an in-person. If I can, but honestly, I also do Zoom studio visits with my artists who are like in Oakland, you know, like it's just nicer than a phone call, you know, like Sadie wanted to meet to catch up with one of my directors and myself and, you know, rather than pushing it off till I had a free day to go to Oakland, we just hopped on Zoom because it's nice to see the person.
Yeah. And also it's kind of nice to see like that process of like doing a studio visit isn't that much different in some ways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're still kind of walking you through like the work and what the thought behind it is. And
Yeah, I mean, you know, you get that wonky like laptop. You're like, are you seeing anything? You know? I mean, but I also do it, like, when I, am talking to, I was on a Zoom with an artist, Gaki Park, who we're gonna do a show with in 2026. And she lives in Montreal, and she's gonna come see the space in November, but I was like, well, we just installed a show, and I did one of those, like, tours of the gallery with my laptop.
Oh.
I don't know what she saw, really. I tried.
Well,
Yeah, great question.
okay, yes.
Congratulations on your baby.
Oh, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
And then also outside of like the stars aligning
Mhm.
and being discovered and not sending unsolicited emails,
Yes.
what is the best way for working artists to get in front of gallery owners and curators
Mhm.
without committing some of those faux pas you guys mentioned
Yeah.
earlier? Like the tactful ways.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of, I don't know so well in Michigan, but there are a lot of juried exhibitions, like in the Bay Area. I don't know if you can like even look on those. I don't think they always have to be for Bay Area artists necessarily, but like Root Division, Southern Exposure, these are just a few places that come to mind. Artist residencies, if you can. The Headlands, an organization I'm deeply engaged with in Marin, amazing residency. It's actually, I also think applying for residencies is great practice because it makes you kind of talk about your work to a general public. Those are things I recommend. Honestly, having a good Instagram account, like this artist Jess Allen was like saying that she felt like her Instagram account is part of like her success, which is interesting because she lives in Cornwall, like it has no sociality and is like just painting alone.
I will say too that Instagram has changed it a lot.
Totally.
You know, there was an artist that was shown here that was on our associate curator Catherine Ransbottom radar, and she showed me the work, and I was like, I've got to see this, and it just so happened that I went and saw it. You know, like that makes a difference too.
I mean, I also would say like, if there's artists in your, I don't know exactly where you're based, but if there's artists that you look up to who have a little more exposure than you,
That's true.
who are in the vicinity, write them an email and just say like, hey, would you come do a studio visit with me? Even like Dash Manley just did that with an artist in LA, who he really wanted to just get eyes on his work to talk through some overlapping ideas that their practices had. And artists are really like, you know, I think kind about that because they've been there. And I know it's been successful for some of the artists, some younger artists, more emerging artists that I've kind of talked to. You know, and listen, artists do submit things all the time. It's not like a massive faux pas. I think it's a very natural thing to do because you want your work seen. It's just that like a lot of the galleries at a certain level don't have just the bandwidth, honestly. So I think my people respond, like it's just like a short thing, but.
I mean, I would also say like my email kind of gets overrun.
Yeah.
So this is for all of you out there that maybe want me to look at something. If you send me physical mail, like I'm gonna be honest and go and double down on physical mail. Because back in the day, like, you know, physical mail was the way.
Don't-
and then we
Don't send artwork.
No.
That's
Not
also
artwork,
happened
not
to me,
artwork.
and I feel
Someone
badly.
sent you artwork in the mail?
Many
Oh my
times,
gosh. Okay,
yeah.
no.
Also, when I had the baby, a few people sent me artwork.
Oh, okay.
Congratulations.
Okay, that's note to
Well, I
self.
just feel badly, I don't want.
No,
like, you know.
exactly, because you want people to have their work and all that. But I would say too, like, if someone really wants a curator's perspective and they're at an institution, sometimes emailing is really hard, or emailing the gallery, but I will tell you that if I get a packet of mail, I actually look at that. It might take me a while. It might take me a while because I get a lot of mail, but like I always will look at that for sure, too.
Yeah, but keep up the studio work, that's kind of the main thing.
I'm asking for others because part of my work is within the photography realm, and there are a lot of photography festivals.
Yeah.
like the Filter Photo Festival in Chicago every year. And people who are working in other media ask me, like, where are these opportunities where it's like speed dating? You have 20 minutes with your portfolio and a gallerist or a curator, and you get these portfolio reviews. So outside of the photography world, are there other festivals that artists might?
That's a great question. I mean, there's probably art fairs where artists have their own booths, but I don't know where, like, I actually think that there's a antique and art fair in San Francisco that I think artists can like rent their own booths at. I mean, you have to pay to be there, but I think it does give exposure. I can't think of other.
I think, oh my goodness, Kate, I'm gonna totally mess up her last name. It's a Polish last name. With Expo Chicago. She started that.
Yeah.
Yeah. She started that arts fair. It's like the Everything Arts Fair or something like that. It happens through Expo Chicago, but it's like a smaller, more affordable, like it's supposed to be like emerging,
That's cool.
like.
I think there's also like fairs in Miami that are, you know, artists have their own booth. And you have to be okay with, can't be like a super introvert, right, to stand there next to your work. Because like you do have to talk to people. I mean, that's what the dealer does, but yeah, I can't think of any other kind of.
I've seen some interesting things that happen at like in Miami, like people renting like trucks, the back of trucks, and like just staging a sort of guerrilla style presentation. I yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah.
Like, you know, as long as there are other people going back there, I want to see it too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a thing too that could happen. And I'm talking about literally, I've seen people do it in like U-Hauls or those, you know, just regular white box trucks. What else? What other opportunities? I know that New York for the Arts, NYFA. NYFA.org has listings of artists, things. If you're a curator, they do call for curators, and that's
Well, I was also gonna say just going back to your question, there's, we like sleuth for our artists, like RFQs or RFPs, and so like you guys should be applying for them. I mean, we have a big network and we're still applying for things on behalf of our artists that we're like, I Googled the other day, like RFPs in the art world, and I found like a website, you could probably find it too, it was just like a ton of them coming up, and you can like look at the media and decide if it fits your practice and like apply.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt.
This is true. I mean, always applying,
Yeah.
you know, when all else fails. I mean, this is your practice is something like that you've kind of said, Jessica, in this, that you really should, you know, should have some rigor to it and some structure, but also like you have to make time for doing that research. Your studio practice can't just be like creating. You've got to take time to make sure that you have your archive right. You've got to take time to do some of that sort of social media and stuff like that.
And remember, I mean,
that's part of your studio practice.
I use Judy Chicago as a point of reference because she's really only having success these past, 8 years. I mean, she's 86 years old. Really didn't have much of a market, but she kept making work every day. Kept fastidious archives, kept all her notebooks, has donated a ton of her notebooks to the Getty archives. I mean, her relevance in art history, like we know, okay, the dinner party and Woman House, but if you look at her market compared to like someone like Larry Bell, it's like night and day. And, we're trying to make sure that success is seen in her lifetime. That's a big goal. But it sometimes just takes time. It's, is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense. Are there any other questions? How's your time?
I don't come to Kalamazoo much.
I know, and I didn't add this. I really should let you know that I have been asking Jessica to come and visit with us for quite some time. You represent Detroit, a lot of Detroit artists, actually.
yeah.
Like, a lot of Detroit artists, I
Yeah,
think, are
we
getting.
just added Beverly Fishman.
I saw that. I did. Bev is like a local icon in Detroit. Yeah, yeah. So, wow.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.